I'm about to share something interesting with you, Joe. We were able to buy at 50 to 60% of ARV less repairs.
How do you know how do you find out what the problems are that your customers are
I
having?
think the two biggest skills are lead generation and sales, like acquisitions, right?
You've seen guys that are doing $1 million a year. If somebody wants to scale, what are some of the operating systems that they need to put in place? Hey, what's going on, guys? Joe McCall. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Mastery Podcast. Glad you're here. Got a good friend with me on the show today. His name is Mike Hambright. A lot of you know him. He's been doing podcasting for a long, long time. He used to call his podcast the Flip Nerd Podcast. Is that what you still call it, Mike?
No, and now we run under the Investor Fuel brand. We actually have a couple
Yes.
shows, but under the Investor Fuel brand.
And you probably changed that like 5 years ago, and I just noticed or something,
I
right?
changed it about 3 years ago, and I've been podcasting almost as long as you. I always kind of say that when I started, there were like only 6 or 7 real estate podcasts in the world, really. And you were one of them. It was interesting, long time ago.
Yeah, and I was just looking at my podcast feed. I last talked to you on this podcast 5 years ago. So
Wow.
I think this is the third one that we've done together.
Okay. I
But
can't believe it's been that long. Obviously, we talk way more
yeah,
regularly than that, but just not in podcast format. So yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. Yeah. Awesome.
well, a lot of people don't know you. I'll just give you a quick intro, then you can give us a quick intro of yourself, if that's all right. Mike has been in
Sure.
the
Yeah.
business a long, long time. He used to own a very large, successful franchise doing deals, doing lots of real estate deals. He sold that franchise and has been kind of doing his own independent thing ever since. The great thing about Mike that I like hanging out with him is I'm always asking him like, what's working today, right? Like what's working, what's not working anymore. And he leads a very successful mastermind called Investor Fuel. And he networks and leads some of the most successful investors in the country that are doing a lot of deals, house deals, land deals, commercial deals, fix and flip, buy and hold, you name it. Mike has been there, done that. He's done a ton of deals himself, still does real estate today, but he also leads other groups of investors. And so I wanted to get him on and talk about kind of what he is seeing that's working today in the market, but more specifically drilling it down into, all right, so we've got a lot of people that are doing a deal here and there. They're doing one deal a month, one deal every couple, 3 months, and they want to scale, but they don't want to go crazy, right? They don't want to hire a huge staff. They don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars a month on ads or marketing or PPC or whatever. So like, I want to ask them some questions on what it takes to today to be successful and scale in this market that we're in right now as we're recording this April 2025, right? Mike, thanks for being on the show. Talk a little bit about how you got started in real estate. Give people a little background on you, would you?
The relatively short version is started in 2008, and I was kind of a corporate refugee. So worked for a huge company that everybody would know that doesn't exist anymore. It was a $5 billion company that I basically got fired, but it wasn't really, it was just because of my proximity. My boss got fired, and then they're like, well, you're kind of part of that regime. So you're going to go to essentially.
Was it Enron or WorldCom?
No, it was, I guess it's not around anymore, so it doesn't matter, but it was like Radio Shack. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And truthfully, this sounds a little weird when I say this, but it was really a dream job. Like it was just, I was in a very, very unique role. I worked directly for the CEO of the company. And in fact, to this day, he still invests in my deals. So,
wow.
But that was a whole lifetime ago now. Kind of hard to believe it's been that long. And then I went to work for a startup that was kind of flying high, and we're doing really well. It was amazing. And then they were about to file for bankruptcy after going public and having an amazing couple of years. And then at the time, my son, Jake, was born like 2 months earlier. And so I was like, they're about to file for bankruptcy. My wife was making more money than me in corporate America as a consultant, and she had left her job to have our son. And so we went from like, a couple young married couple doing well to like no income, no idea how to be parents, living in a far off land because we had moved from Dallas to Washington, D.C. for this last role. And it was just this like wake up call of like, no matter how hard I work for somebody else, I don't really have control over my destiny, And that was really the beginning of getting into real estate. And I had no idea what I was doing. Initially we were trying to buy stuff off the MLS, and we had no idea what we were doing. And then eventually kind of figured out, how kind of wholesaling works, like essentially how to find wholesale real estate. And
what year was that you started?
That was 2008. That was 2008, summer of 2008, basically when we first started. Yeah. So, and a lot's changed since then. Like I was a real estate investor. After I flipped about 100 houses, I started doing coaching. Then next thing you know, we have a rental company. Next thing you know, we've got just things kind of get bolted on as that's just kind of how it tends to work, right? You go down all these paths and it wasn't planned out, but you come to all these forks in the road and you're like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Or, and some of that stuff has disappeared. Like some of that stuff we tried, let's do that. And then we're like, let's shut it down.
Yeah,
But you got to try stuff, I guess, to see what sticks.
I get it.
Yeah.
All right. So you started a mastermind called Investor Fuel.
Yeah.
And you've got investors, all of them have done deals or doing deals, right? So
Yeah.
you have your finger on the pulse, I think, pretty well, more than most people that I've had on my show, of what's working today across the country in different niches, in different spaces, in different verticals or whatever. This is a really broad question, but like, where do you see the market right now for real estate investors specifically in the single family home industry specifically?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a challenging couple of years for sure, right? I think that, but there's some people that are just doing really well right now, right? And those people tend to be the people that didn't get shiny object syndrome over the past couple of years and say, this is really hard. Let me go do something else. They just doubled down on doing what they do and doing it well. Maybe got leaner and meaner and got pulled back into the business. In my mastermind, we have about 150 members and we have different groups based on kind of volume of the business, but our average member is probably doing between 50 and 75 deals a year. So yeah, this is not for new investors for sure, right? And so those that have kind of, doubled down on the business have tended to do really well. And those that didn't slash marketing necessarily, right? Like I think it's common. I also run an agency. I run a marketing lead gen company for professional real estate investors. So I'm a little biased, but I'll tell you that I believe this long before I owned an agency, was that the last thing you should try to cut is lead gen if you're cutting back on your business. Like that's because that is the fuel that fuels your business. And so a lot of people, that's the first thing they cut, especially if it's a big expense, because it just seems like I can make this decision and slash my expenses and kind of, reduce kind of burn on your business or drag on your business. But the reality is you don't feel it right then. And sometimes people are like, yeah, I cut my marketing and, things are still going pretty well. And it's like, yeah, but let's talk in 6 months when that sales pipeline is dried up and you have nothing coming in, right? So I'd say what's working now are people that kind of stayed laser focused and people that did not slash their marketing. Maybe they adjusted it. Maybe they started to take it a little more seriously and look at what channels they can move money around, like take money out of and put it into. But that's really what's been working well. I mean, if you think of like what's going on, this is kind of how I describe what's going on in this market is for honestly, probably at least half of the houses that I bought over the years were from people. So these are rough numbers when I say 50-50. Half of the deals are from people that were truly in distress, death, divorce, inheritance, tired landlords, people like that. And then the other half was just from people that just wanted the convenience. Like their house was probably distressed, but they just wanted the convenience of an easy sale and they wanted to move on, right? And that second half there are usually people that needed another house. They needed to sell that house to move into something else. And now with interest rates where they are as compared to where they were, those folks are just holding tight. So the distress sells, the death, divorce, inheritance, and all those tired landlords, like those are still happening because the people just needed to get out, right? Or somebody died, like they don't need a house anymore, or somebody inherited a house, or it's a landlord that's not their primary residence, so they're like, let's get rid of that thing. I'm tired of dealing with this. But the convenience sales are way down because those were kind of primary residence folks that still needed a primary residence. So in a nutshell, there's still a lot of activity happening, but it's not as much. But that doesn't mean, a lot of times, like a lot of stats you look at, I just looked at somebody was sharing stats like Collin County, which is kind of in the DFW area here. People are like, oh, Collin County's collapsing. I said the median price point, the median sale was down like 5% year over year. But that doesn't mean that all sales prices are down 5%. It means the median price point of the house is selling. Like people could have just pivoted to cheaper houses, right? So stats are always a little bit wonky. So even if volume is cut in half lately, well, competition's been cut by more than half. So there's people that are able to do well. They just took a bigger slice of the pie that was out there, right?
Yeah. What's interesting is when it does seem to be when the market is shifting and changing, people don't realize this. There's a lot of people that have left the market, the real estate investors market. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that are not marketing for your deals anymore when it's gotten tougher. It's like you see this is easier to track with realtors, right? Because you can track how many licenses are active. You can track
Yeah.
how many licenses go down or get expire. And you can track how many new people are getting their real estate license, right? And you see this swing on every time the market goes up and down. When the market's really hot, there are tons and tons of realtors. And then when the market goes down, there's very few realtors. Well, guess where the money is being made? So the realtors specifically, I'm thinking of this because it's easier to track those numbers than wholesalers. You can really see huge swings constantly. And I think we're coming out of, at least for the last year or two, we're coming out of this intense competition from wholesalers from every different YouTube university that was out there teaching wholesaling, right?
Yeah.
They're just not doing it anymore. And it's easier to do deals, I'm finding now, than it was before, as long as you're focusing on the right things, which is marketing and filling your lead pipeline, right?
That's right. Yep.
And one of the things I was thinking about this too is you look at like, and I've not done this, I've seen other people show me the stats, but you look at the Google search analysis of how to wholesale a house or how to find good deals. The search volume for those types of things on YouTube and Google are way down.
I bet.
There's just
Yeah.
not as many people looking and trying to learn how to do that. And I've talked to people with really huge YouTube channels, and they are kind of complaining that the views that have real estate investing beginner type of YouTube channels, right? They're kind of complaining that the viewership has gone down from where it was a couple years ago. So
Yeah.
you're seeing a
Makes sense,
lot.
though.
Yeah, you see a lot of new investors, a lot fewer new investors coming into the market right now because it's just gotten hard. And they're going to go back to doing what they were doing before.
It's interesting though, because I started in 2008 and everybody was running away from the market. And the truth is it was an amazing time to get in. The other truth I'll share is we just got lucky. Like we didn't plan, that wasn't
Yeah.
planned. Like a lot of people are like, man, what a great time to get in. I was like, we were just at a point where we were back against a wall. I'm like, we got to do something, right? So it
Well,
was
and you were
coincidental.
lucky. You were lucky because you were in the market,
Right. Well, I'm
right?
saying our first year doing, we had no prior experience. We flipped 65 houses in our first year, but which is unusual. But we were, it's a combination of a few things. A lot of the competition had gone away. And we were just, we kind of ran it a little more like a corporation just because that was our background. So we had some, we kind of went big or went home type with it, let's go big or go home type mentality. And we just didn't have at that point, in the market, there were a lot of bad practices. A lot of people had, bad buys, bad inventory. A lot of the lending had dried up. A lot of things were bad for people that had a history, and we had no history. We were like virgins, coming into the market,
Yeah.
and we didn't have those bad habits yet, and we didn't have these pre-existing conditions about how it used to be because we were new.
Well, I remember those days too. I kind of got started part-time in 2006 and then full-time in 2009.
Yeah.
But I remember those times because there was at the time a blog, a forum called Flipping Homes. I don't know if you remember that, flippinghomes.com. And at the time, Flipping Homes was as big as Bigger Pockets, like that. It was the big thing that everybody went to. And that was before Facebook groups even. But at the time, I remember people complaining about, in 2008, complaining about the banks aren't lending any money anymore. There's a lot of motivated sellers, but there's no buyers that are looking to buy these deals anymore. And how can you fix and flip when banks won't lend money? All this stuff. And you could find something to complain about in any market, whether it's going up or down, flat or sideways.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
And I remember back then too, so vividly, there were some people, and if you were active in these masterminds, in these networks, in these groups like Flipping Homes, there were people doing deals there. They had changed their approaches. I mean, what was working maybe a year or two ago when the market was screaming white hot, maybe wasn't working as well now. But they pivoted.
Right.
They pivoted, and they were doing things a little differently, and they were focusing on the fundamentals. And I remember this so vividly as well. The people that were doing a lot of fix and flip, the people that were doing a lot of rehabbing and had a lot of debt were getting killed because they had a lot of inventory they couldn't sell, or people that had a lot of rental properties were getting crushed because they were having a lot of vacancies, and a lot of these short-term mortgages that they had were getting called due, or like,
That's right. Banks were calling loans. Yeah.
Yeah. The loans were like, they were short-term adjustable rate mortgages, some of them, and the rates were going up. But anyway, regardless, I remember this so clearly too. The people that did well during that time were the ones that were focusing on wholesaling, just getting in and out of deals really, really quick. And they did a lot of marketing. They focused on acquisitions. They focused on marketing and making offers. And the other thing I remember too, that one of the reasons why the people that did do well, it got hard to get financing from the big traditional banks, right?
Yeah.
The Washington Mutuals, Countrywide, those, right? But they found local banks that would finance deals. And so they would actually, because financing got hard, they saw a problem, they went and fixed it. And so when they wholesaled houses, they would provide the financing with it. They found a house that needed a bunch of work. They got it under contract from either the banks or from sellers or whatever. They would go to their local credit unions, the local regional banks, and would say, hey, if here's a deal that we are going to buy for this amount of money, it needs about this amount of work. We think conservatively after you sell it, it'll be worth this, whatever. Would you lend money on a deal like this to a rehabber? And they would, if they said yes or no, whatever, great. And then they would say, what are some of the qualifications you would need from somebody to lend on this deal? And they would say, well, we would need somebody that has this and this and this. So then they would go and market this property that says, hey, here's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot house that needs 50 grand in work. Financing is included to this kind of a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And they would package these deals together for these buyers. And these wholesalers that did this were killing it at this time, and were doing tons and tons of deals because they found the pain that was going on in the market that was similar at that time. They did a lot of marketing, they made a lot of offers, and they brought solutions to the people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, interestingly enough, Joe, we primarily were fix and flipping during that time, but I'm also in the Dallas market, and so while Texas is kind of red hot now, it was really never hit as hard as some other markets even back then. So I'm about to share something interesting with you, Joe, if I don't say so myself. Is even back then, 2008 to 2010, when we were flipping houses, it was pretty uncommon that we would have a house on the market and not under contract. We would get them under contract typically in 7 days or less.
Yes.
And but here's the reality is we were able to buy at 50 to 60% of ARV less repairs at that time. We over rehabbed everything, and we would sell it like right at where the market is. Like we put out a better product at a fair price, and we just inserted ourselves. I like to say, there might be 90 days of inventory in that neighborhood, right? But we just found a way to always insert ourselves first in line. Like we're next, and so there was still a marketplace. There's still a market everywhere. It's like, how do you build a better mousetrap is the question.
Well, how do you find out what the problems are that your customers are having? And in this case, as wholesalers, most of us are wholesalers. Our customer is the buyer, the fix and flipper, right?
Yeah.
And so what are the problems they're having? Or maybe the retail buyers that are buying these houses. The problem they're having is getting financing, maybe, right? Yeah. Interest rates are too high. What if you could find creative ways to sell your deals with the financing already in place? Yeah. Or a way that you could offer some, what do you call them, buybacks or incentives or something to get the rates to come down. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and you learn that kind of stuff by not hiding in a corner, but by networking, getting involved in masterminds and listening to what's going on and finding out what's working today.
No doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I remember so vividly too at that time, because I was trying to do buy and hold, and I was trying to do rehab, fix and flip at that time in 2008 and 9. And I had a bunch of rental properties that were hemorrhaging cash. And I remember feeling like I think the most important skill to learn, I remember thinking this, the most important skill to learn in real estate investing is how to find the deals, and how to wholesale, like how to get good deals and then sell them immediately. Because at the time it was easier. It was smarter to make a quick nickel than a slow dime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when there's times of uncertainty, the faster you're in and out of a deal, the less risk that you're taking on. And I'm wondering if we're coming into a market right now, maybe not, who knows, where there's a lot of uncertainty and people are freaking out, stock market's going crazy, tariffs, whatever, maybe it's just hype and hysteria, but it's really good to learn how to hedge your risk and protect yourself, right?
Yeah. If you can generate lead, if you get, like, I do think I think the two biggest skills are lead generation and sales, like acquisitions, right? If you're good at those things and you buy kind of right, you have options, at least. Like for a lot of folks that don't know how to buy right, or if they buy from wholesalers or off the MLS or at the auction or whatever, where they're generally paying higher prices, like you can't like go double wholesale that. Like you're not going to wholesale it again typically. So you're stuck only being a rehabber or keeping it as a rental. And so, the deeper you can buy, the more options you have, right?
It's funny too. I remember it was in 2007 and 8 when I was hemorrhaging a lot of cash, and I joked that I was a professional student for 3 years because I bought course after course after course and just kept on spending more money on my education than I was making. But I did decide I'm going to buy one more course, and I'm just going to do what the guy says to do. And it was Chris Chico, mutual friend of ours.
Oh, wow.
He had a course called Absentee Owner Profits. And it was all about how to buy lists of absentee owners and send ugly postcards and then send them to a voicemail and then call them, talk to them, and send them an offer. But at the time, I remember complaining like, oh man, there's too much competition. Like everybody's doing direct mail, right? These sellers, and the sellers were getting a lot of postcards at the time. And I was targeting the biggest, easiest to get list that everybody else was targeting, absentee owners or tired landlords, But guess what? It worked. It actually worked. Even when at the time, maybe there wasn't as much competition as there is today. I don't know, but there was a lot of it. And it was, I owe a lot to Chris because he really opened my eyes to the importance of marketing. And I realized at that time, we're not in the real estate investing business. We're in the marketing business.
Yeah, for sure.
And leads are the lifeblood of your business.
No doubt.
Will you talk a little bit about like, what are you seeing that's working today for marketing? PPC, direct mail, things like that.
Before I get into that, did you know, I would love it if he was watching right now. Did you hear about Chris Chico's new training program?
About Facebook ads or digital billboards?
No, the one that's how to properly wear a man bag. Don't
Chris,
cut that out, Joe. Don't cut it out.
Chris, if you're watching this, you do need to explain yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
You wear that too much and you wear it too tight around your chest,
That's right.
You need to lose some pounds because some things are like coming out of your shirt that we don't want to see.
Or just lose the man bag, really.
And the man boobs. Right?
So we got to make a short from this and share it with Chris. So yeah, from a marketing standpoint, I think, every channel works, but I'm obviously partial to inbound leads. So we've got plenty of information to show that inbound leads, so mail, pay-per-click, SEO, TV, like those leads tend to have profits that are 2 to 3x higher than outbound texting and cold calling. And those things are struggling. Texting is like, going away quickly. Cold calling is still a struggle. But, if that's where you're at in your business and you have to hustle, you have to kind of put in some sweat equity to get to that next level. That just is what it is. Like, I'm not a fan of those things, but if that's where you're at and that's what you have to do to get ahead, then that's just it's the season of hustle you have to get through, right? But ultimately, when you can pay for marketing and leads come to you proverbially while you're sleeping, right? Then that is the way to kind of scale this business. So otherwise it's a job, right? If you kind of overlay the real estate investing business, like what investors are doing, how hard they're working with Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, it's like you're an employee, then you're self-employed, then you're a business owner that has systems and processes and a team in place, but you're probably still working in the business. And then the lower right is your money is working for you and you don't have to lift a finger, right? And that's where everybody wants to get to. But a lot of people get stuck in that self-employed box where they own a business, but the business really owns them, ultimately. And that's a stage that everybody has to go through, by the way. So if you're there and you're listening to this, like, hey, that's just where you're at, but don't get stuck there unless you're aware you're stuck there and you're okay with it. Some people are actually okay with that, but I think a lot of us aspire to. That's why there's a lot of people that churn out of the business after 3 to 5 years. They just get burned out, but it's because they got stuck in basically a job,
Interesting. So the inbound marketing, I find that so true. The quality of a lead from somebody who's calling you back or calling you and you're answering the phone is so much different. And it does cost more per lead without a doubt, but you kind of get what you pay for.
Yeah. You can, obviously the conversion, I mean, on an inbound lead, you might convert, depends on the channel, but it might be 1 in 15 you're converting. On outbound, nobody really knows how to define what a lead is in the first place. But even the way that most people would define it, maybe it's 1 in 50 or 1 in 100 that you're going to close. So, the leads are more expensive, but I actually say this all the time. The cost per lead doesn't really matter at all. Like what really matters is, a phrase that you and I would know better than most in this industry is ROAS, like for every dollar I put in, how many do I get back? Return on ad spend, right?
And direct mail. I love direct mail. I do direct mail every day. I use and sell software that does direct mail. I love direct mail. I just taught a class, Mike, recently on how to send outbound direct mail about 5 or 10 letters a day. In certain hot markets, you find a property, you send the seller an actual offer, giving them two options, a cash and owner financing offer. The cash is at, this price, and owner financing is a little higher price. And so I have students and clients that are actually doing it. And guess what's going on? Like, I could tell you that I'm doing it, I'm getting deals. People just don't believe me, or they just don't care. Probably both. But when I have people that are doing this now and actually seeing results, one guy in 30 days got 4 deals under contract, and
Awesome.
he would just 5 days a week, he would send 5 to 10 letters out. Now he's targeting vacant land,
Right.
but the point of it is direct mail works. And the more personalized it is, the reason why it's working so well is because he's handwriting each envelope, and he's sending an offer that's specific to that property that he was looking at. And so it's a very good offer. And he's probably offering more than anybody else because he knows that area so well. I love direct mail. What percent of investors that you see that are doing deals today successful wholesalers, successful rehabbers, or whatever, that are doing direct mail?
I think for scaled up businesses, it's a really high percentage. And the reason is you can scale the heck out of it, right? I mean, most channels are hard to scale. Even pay per click, it's hard to scale because once you get up to a certain point, like Google or Facebook, it will take all your money for sure, but you're just bidding yourself up because of the auction. It's an auction process, right? But direct mail, the point of if you're in a lot, and it depends on the size of your market you're into. I mean, I'm in DFW with 8 million people. If you're in a major market, your budget is probably never, there's probably always room to grow your budget because there's more houses than you could ever market to, right? But I think that honestly, I think it's probably 70+% of high volume real estate investors are using mail because they have to. Like, you just run out of other things to do, and mail is probably the most scalable thing. And if you're working with somebody like Investor Machine or somebody like that, like, it's the easiest thing to do. You basically just send a text to somebody and say, I want to double my budget, right? I mean, there's no effort for you to do. It's not like cold calling where you're like, okay, we have to hire twice as many cold callers, and then half of them are going to quit within 30 days. So I got to keep recruiting them and hiring them and training them and churning them out. And I never have enough data, and I always got to keep refilling the systems and stuff like that. I mean, you're not, if you're working with somebody, you don't have to do anything besides decide and write a bigger check ultimately.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the person who's already doing 1 or 2 deals a month, 1 or 2 deals every 2 months. And they want to scale, right? We have a mutual friend, I won't say who, but he wants to write a book that's called Should I Scale My Business or Slit My Wrists? That's because he's tried scaling that's not funny, really. But if you know the guy I'm talking about, it is. You want to scale your business, you want to grow, you want to make more money without all of the pain and the hassle and, the nightmare that goes with that. Yeah. Because as you scale, your overhead grows, you have more people. So what are you seeing people that are scaling successfully with low overhead and high margins? What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, those are a little bit of a contrarian like words, right? Is like, most people that scale their business up have to add in more marketing and more people to do that. But if you think of it as like a stair step, you could whether you're doing land or houses, you could be a solopreneur and do 2 or 3 deals a month, like, without it being a total nightmare, right? But to get to 3 to 5, every time you take that stair step up, you have to invest more money in people and marketing. And at the beginning of that, it's an investment that hasn't paid off yet. So you have to wait for it to catch up. So that's why if you're going to do more than 3, well, you might as well do 5 to 7, right? Because you have to overcome your fixed costs. And there are a lot of fixed costs in the business. I mean, if you have an office or you have an admin, like, you could probably do 5 to 7 deals a month. Depends on whether you're wholesaling or doing land or fix and flipping or whatever a little bit. But you could probably do, 7+ deals a month with one admin, right? But then after you get over some level, maybe it's 7, maybe it's 10, now you need another admin, right? But if you think of like all the costs in your business, you want to just kind of sweat the fixed costs. Like, try to operate where you're using those fixed costs at full capacity, where your only incremental expense is advertising and, maybe additional people, or in our business, it would probably be an acquisitions person that's variable cost anyway. And so you want to try to like basically just kind of sweat your fixed cost. I mean, that's how, I'm going to go off on a tangent a little bit here, but that's how a lot of factories work. If they have excess capacity, then they start producing, let's just say it's like, canned vegetables or something, right? So they have extra capacity. So then they start doing private label stuff. The margins are smaller, but they just want to keep those machines running 24/7 because they're already paid for the most part. The variable cost to run those is not very high, right? And it's the same thing in our business. It's like you want to try to sweat your fixed expenses to the edge of where they're fully maximized. And it's a little academic, but I mean, that is how that, in my view, that's how you scale is, and you could have a nice life by doing 3 deals a month if you keep it lean and mean, right? But if you really ultimately want to buy back your time and not be stuck in the business like every single day, you've got to get it up to a level where you can afford to hire competent people and afford to spend money on outbound marketing that will allow them the machine essentially to run without you having to have a heavy hand in everything.
That's really good. I played golf yesterday with a guy who is a successful businessman and wants to, he tried doing I call it scale bros. He wanted to go do scale bros and get real big. And he had a huge team of VAs and he was taking on a bunch of clients and stuff like that. And he just found out that he hated it. He hated the stress. He was making a lot of money, but it just wasn't worth it. And so he decided, you know what, I'm just going to scale down. I'm going to keep it small, keep it all. And
Yep.
he is doing very, very well now. He has nothing that he can brag about. I mean, in a certain sense that he is not making a ton of money that's going to make you impressed and say, oh, wow, that's awesome. But if you look at how many hours a week he's working, and you're going to think, man, that's pretty cool. Actually, he's got it really easy. Like maybe he went from making 750 grand a year to making 200 grand a year right now.
Yeah.
But his profit margins went from maybe 25% to 75%.
Sure. Yeah.
So he's actually keeping a lot more of the money and his hourly rate is way better now.
Yeah.
So like, obviously this is different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But can you can you gross 500 grand a year with just you and maybe one or two other people doing, let's say, wholesaling?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think you might be working a lot, but you got to have, I think you want to have really good people that can shelter a lot. Listen, I've got across my businesses, we probably have 75 virtual assistants that work for us. So I'm big. And I'm talking about, a lot of entry level administrative folks, and then even some high level, almost like executive level overseas folks as well. But I know you're big on VAs as well, Joe. So there's a big difference between those that come in and try to get the like absolute lowest cost VA and the person that's twice as much. It's still really, really cheap, but the quality level is the equivalent of, paying somebody in the US 30 or 40,000 a year versus 80 or 100, right? Is like, so it's still insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Like cost wise, it's still pretty cheap, but like always just go at the end of the day, like as a business owner, you have to know, like you're trying to get people that save you time. And like if you value your time enough, you should be willing to pay more for that because your time is the most valuable asset you have. So how do you find really good people to make your life easier? But yeah, you could stay lean and mean. There's a lot of us that are just on that hunt to build something bigger. I was talking to somebody recently in one of my podcasts, and they were just like, it's kind of this innate like thing deep inside of he was talking about every man that they just want to build. Like, I want to build something. You're a creator, Joe. I'm a creator. Like, that's why we're good friends. We're like always bouncing ideas off of each other, watching what each other are doing. Right. But you could work less hard than you do now. And I could too, but it's like, it leaves you kind of empty inside because I'm a builder. I want to create stuff. I want to create stuff that impacts other people. I want to create stuff that impacts me and my family. Right. And so, but everybody's different. I like to work hard. I like to work.
Yeah.
As long as I'm doing mostly what I enjoy, I'm okay with that. But some people would be okay working, not working at all and just living a life with their family and stuff. And it's not that I don't want to live life with my family. I mean, I do.
Right.
But I just find that I like to be in the lab, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So I want to talk about, I guess, you've seen guys that are doing $1 million a year. in a wholesaling business. Maybe they're doing a few fix and flips here and there. $1 million a year, that's about 90 grand a month, right? Is that right? Yeah, about $90,000 a month. What kind of operation does that person need to have in terms of, their marketing budget maybe, and you can use general numbers, the amount of staff, how many dispositions team members, how many acquisition team members, how much are they spending a month on overhead or marketing to do, 90 to 100 grand a month?
Yeah. Yeah. And we've got some guys in our mastermind that are doing, 800 wholesale deals a year. That's kind of crazy. They have a huge operation. So that I won't use them as an example because they're unusually large. But, one of the things I didn't always think about it this way. I'm like thinking about what do I want to make? Like, how do I do what I want? How do I make what I want to make? Right. It's all about me in the early years. And I think one of the ways to back into it is if you were to hire a good salesperson, an acquisitions person, right? That's a really good salesperson and can make your life easy. Like, think of like, what does the average need to be for that person in your market? Like maybe 100 grand. I mean, you're not going to find some killer sales guy or woman for like 30,000 a year. You're just not going to find them. Right. So you kind of have to back into your business a little bit and say, how do I get the people that are working for me? How do I build a business that hits their goals? Because if they're not hitting their goals, they're going to be gone and I'm going to get pulled back in, or I'm going to have to go hire somebody else again and keep getting pulled back in. If you were to back into, say, somebody that, hypothetically, a salesperson wants to make $100,000 a year. And if they make, 15% of gross profit, then you have to figure out, well, how much in gross profit does my business need to do to make that person happy, right? And happen to have a calculator here. So let's just do the math. If I said that they want to make $100,000 a year, divide that by 0.15, which is 15%, that means they have to generate for the company about 666,000, 666 number, Joe. I don't want to freak you out, but let's just say they need to make $700,000 a year for the company to have a $100,000 a year person. So said another way, if your goal is to make $1 million a year, you might as well shoot for someone that's going to make 1.2 to 1.5 so you can afford to have two salespeople. And there's always this kind of thing about salespeople is like, if you have one, you have none, because you do lose people a lot, or if they're not hitting the goals, like they're going to leave, right? And then you're going to keep getting pulled back in as the owner because you're the CEO and chief bottle washer, right? So if you kind of back into it that way and say, okay, well, to feed $200,000 a year people, I need to be able to operate and generate roughly $1.4 million a year in gross profit for my business. And then you kind of back into like, well, how many admins do I need to support a team doing that? And it's probably a couple, right? And so that's kind of how I look at it, is like, what's the, if you were a football coach, you'd be thinking like, okay, who am I going to put on the field and who do I need and what's it going to cost, right? And I think we often just look at the number that we want and we think, well, if I bring on a salesperson, somebody might try to bring on two salespeople in a business that their goal is to make $800,000 a year, but that business can't support two salespeople. So something bad's going to happen, and then on top of that, to continue to use that example, is to generate a $1.4 million a year business. How much do you have to spend in marketing to get the leads you need to make your sales team happy, right? It's like, okay, well, if they need to, this is back of the napkin math. If you said, hey, I need to have 4x ROAS, so for every dollar I put into marketing, I get 4 back, then that $1.4 million business, you need to spend 25% of that, whatever that is, like $350,000 a year on marketing. And that's how I look at it.
$350,000 a year in marketing. I mean, you need to think about that. Like if you want to make $1 million, $1.4 million a year, you need to spend over $300,000 in marketing. Yeah. That's a lot. Most people can't stomach that.
Right.
They're like, no,
I mean,
man,
but that is what it takes to scale. I mean, we are talking about, if you do the math on that, that's somebody that's probably netting, if the acquisitions manager cost is 15% and the marketing is 25%, now you're at 40. And let's just say other administrative cost is 10%, you're netting half of that. Your business is a 50% net business and you're making $750,000 a year, right? You got to spend money to make money.
Yeah. And that's why you got to ask yourself, is that the kind of business I want to manage? Are you good at managing people? Are you good at taking the risks? Let's talk about somebody who does want to scale. We've talked before about the, what's it called? The EOS, the traction system and all that.
Yeah.
You've talked about, you have the investor fuel operating system, right?
That's right.
Talk a little bit about that. Like, what are some of the things that if somebody wants to scale and the thought of them spending 350 grand a year on marketing doesn't scare them. The thought of managing 2 salespeople doesn't scare them. What are some of the operating systems that they need to put in place to at least start thinking about that stuff in advance,
A lot of it is the stuff we just talked about. It's truly planning. It's just like having a plan that makes sense, right? And then it's like, how much do I need to spend to get here? And if those numbers that I just shared scare you, if you're a solopreneur and you're doing a lot of the work, like you're just trading your time for money. Like right now, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if that's what you want to do, but just know that if you were, ask yourself this question: if you were to hire somebody to come in and replace you in that business, how much would it cost you to replace? Like, I guess, how much are you willing to go do what you do for somebody else for? Like, if Joe
Yeah.
said, "Hey, I'm hiring," and you'd say, "Hey, I'll come do it. It's 150,000 a year." Well, that's what your time's worth, right? And so that's what you're costing yourself. So you may not see it in dollars, but you're seeing it in sweat equity, right? But yeah, the fuel operating system is just a plan. A lot of these systems are the same. So like EOS, it's where do you want your business to be out of ways, 5 years? What does it need to look like in 3 years to hit that 5 year goal? What does it need to look like in a year to hit that 3 year goal? And then what do I need to do this quarter and ultimately this day or this week to hit my monthly goal, to hit my quarterly goal, to hit my annual goal? So it's just a methodical approach to kind of backing into your vision for what you want to happen and being realistic about the numbers to get there. So in my experience, a lot of people have a number, like I want to make $1 million this year, but they don't have the team resources or the advertising or lead gen resources to get them there. It's just simply a dream, right?
Yeah. Well, it's important to think about that stuff. And if you get intimidated when you look at the book Traction, for example,
Yeah.
like I did, I started reading that thing and my eyes glazed over. And I like to read. It's not like I don't like to read.
That's a hard read. Yeah. That one's a little textbooky.
Well, then there's another one. What is it called? Scale Up or something like that?
Scaling Up, but a good one also by Gino Wickman that does EOS is Rocket Fuel. So
Yes.
it really helps you kind of identify who you are in terms of being a visionary or an integrator. And it kind of makes it clear that there are people that, like you and I, Joe, are visionaries, right? If I didn't work with
Yes.
my wife in the business that is more of the implementer, like we would have been dead a long time ago. But, we're the yin and yang to the business of the person that's cleaning up my messes and doing the work versus me being a visionary and having these big ideas, right?
Right. So find out who you are, the implementer or the visionary.
Yeah.
The integrator or the visionary, and go find the other person maybe.
That's right.
But so, scaling is not for everybody. Some people obviously listen to this, they just want to do their first deal. Other people are like, man, I want to scale, but I want to make more money, but I don't want a huge staff and huge overhead. So these are some things you got to think about. Any advice, Mike, that you think we haven't talked about yet for somebody that wants to go from 1 or 2 deals a month to 3 or 4 deals a month?
I think the biggest thing is, there's a lot of people that kind of, just in any business, honestly, I mean, everybody in America, not everybody, but a lot of people expect this immediate gratification, right? I want to do something today. Like, I mean, I do it all the time. I'm an Amazon junkie. So I'm like, oh, I think I need something, order it online. I get it sometimes the same day, often the next day. Right. And I just like that immediate gratification. And then it shows up. I'm like, it's one of my vices. I'm an Amazon junkie. People expect to take a pill and lose 50 pounds or I lost all my hair. I'm going to go get a surgery and replace it tomorrow. I mean, you can do all those things, but the truth is that's just not how the real world works in terms of entrepreneurship. You have to be willing to do hard things for a long time to see results, and you're not going to see immediate results. And so you have to be willing to get punched in the nose over and over and over again and keep getting up and keep going forward. And at some point you won't get punched in the nose anymore because you know how to dodge, right? So I gave this analogy the other day of even the best pro athletes in the country that we all are impressed with. Like at one point they didn't even know how to walk, right? But they learned how to walk.
That's a good analogy.
Then they learned how to run. Then they learned how to do the thing they're doing. And they learned how to do it to the next level, the next level, the next level. So most professional athletes started just like you and me. We were playing t-ball or whatever, and they just never quit. And they just kept getting better, better, better every day, every year. That's how entrepreneurship is too. It's hard up front, but you can't get to, the majors until you get through t-ball, the t-ball of a flip of land, Joe.
How can people get a hold of you, Mike?
Yeah, the best way, obviously they could go to investorfuel.com and learn more about that. You can connect with me on Facebook. Those are probably the 2 best ways. I also run a lead gen company called an Investor Machine. So you go to investormachine.com and learn more about that there. Those are the primary ways.
Your podcast, what is it called?
Investor Fuel. So yeah, if you go to the investorfuel.com website, or you go to our handles Investor Fuel on YouTube, or anywhere where you can listen to podcasts, just look for the Investor Fuel show.
And I'm going to be on your show soon.
Yeah.
All right, man. Mike, it's been good talking to you. Investor Fuel. I love that. And then your done for you marketing service is Investor Machine.
That's right.
So check that out. And good talking to you, Mike. I'm going to be in the DFW area in a couple of weeks, so we should hang out.
Yeah. Let me know where you're going to be at and what the dates are.
Yeah. We'll talk offline about that. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good one. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yep. Have a good day.